Thanks for joining us today. Of course, thanks to the British Council, the FCL, and the Canadian Government for putting this on and for having us as folks who would, I guess, facilitate this discussion. For those who are wondering who we are and what we do, we are the Commentators Network. We are a bipartisan news network, and what we do primarily is we try and improve the way young people consume digital journalism. I say young, but millennials. Everyone has an honorary millennial. And we try and do it by getting people to come together, ideological opposites, debating, discussing, and really sharing thoughts and ideas. I think by doing that, we can learn about the other side, learn about people who disagree with us, and be informed by them, quite frankly. So we've got a really fascinating panel who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the discussion, and this is discussion, so we want you guys to get involved as well. And we've got Esther there with a roving mic. So if at any stage you want to kind of give your piece, obviously make it nice and succinct. We're going to get you involved as well, but let's first meet our stars, if you like, right? And they all have mics. I'm going to ask you guys to just tell us a bit about yourself, what's relevant, and perhaps not what you'd like to, just what's relevant, and then we'll crack on. So we'll start from this end and we'll work back this way.
Hello, my name's Jazza. I am a digital content creator. So I work across multiple platforms. I have 2 podcasts, which isn't enough. A YouTube channel. I was a creator for change for YouTube last year, where I made a documentary about LGBT refugees in the UK and across the EU. And I have also worked with companies in the third sector over the last few years around kind of like youth engagement. So I was probably most heavily involved in the largest voter registration drive in the UK when I was part of Bite the Ballot, where we registered 300,000 people in a day, which is pretty cool. I'm also the only person at this conference in shorts.
Hi, I'm Ezra Levance. A couple years ago, I debuted a movie called Shunned about LGBTQ refugees in Tel Aviv.
We can be friends.
They fled from the West Bank and Gaza Strip where they would have been honor killed, and so they're living in Tel Aviv. They're Muslim, gay men and women, so it's an incredible story. I'm a digital content creator too, but I didn't wear shorts, I'm jealous. I guess my claim to fame in the media freedom point of view is that about a dozen years ago, when I published a magazine, made a paper, we republished the Danish cartoons of Mohammed. And I was prosecuted for 900 days by the government of my region. And they only dropped the case when we managed to shame them. More recently, the Canadian government has banned my news outlet, directing the United Nations to not accredit our journalists. So I'm frankly shocked I was allowed in here, and I'm doubly shocked you allowed me on the panel, but thanks, Mike.
Always welcome.
Okay, so my name is Minna. I'm a junior news editor from Egypt. I'm also a Future News Worldwide alumni, if you know alumnus, if you know this, yeah, okay. So basically what I do is that back home I pick and choose between subjects. And I present what I think matters the most, and then it gets picked up. Sorry.
All right. I'm Alexandra. I'm from Hungary, and I'm also a Future News Worldwide alumni. So here, the left side is representing the Future News Worldwide project. So I work as an online news editor for Hungary's main English news site for those who don't speak English but are still interested in news about Hungary. And I hope I can be of interest because the media industry is quite complicated and has been through a lot of changes in Hungary. So I hope I can have some valuable input.
Hi, is that one on? Yeah. Cool. Ashley Hanna. I'm editor of the Tab Glasgow, have been for a few years, which is an entirely student-run online publication. I'm also here with the British Council Future News Worldwide alumni, and I'm actually moving away from journalism into government policy advising now, so have a couple of angles to come at this from, but thanks for coming.
Lovely. Well, we've got lots of great people here, and I know we have equally lots of great people there. So feel free to make your voices heard, as I said, and we want this to be as round as we can. So this is kind of a horseshoe. If we could make it round and you guys get involved, that would be lovely. For those wondering, my name is Mike Omni, and I, like I said, I'm the founder of the TCS Network. My real interest is studying argumentation, so I'm currently working on the PhD looking at cyber balkanization, essentially how communities gather or amalgamate online and how they debate, and then echo chambers and things of that nature. So I will be firm but fair. So I've told the panel already, but equally here, if you're making a point and it's going on a bit, I might say just bring it down a bit. Please just listen. It's just so we can get a conversation going. That's pretty much it. But without further ado, I would kind of, in fact, before we go on, I probably should share with you. If you follow, okay, no, it's the wrong way around. If you go this way, that's our social. So if you want to get your voices out there, perhaps you're not feeling confident enough, you can tweet us, Facebook us, and I can see it on here, and I can read out your comments, perhaps. If you don't want to, you want to remain anonymous, or perhaps you don't just want to say it. So please feel free to get at us on social media equally. Hashtag is obviously defend media freedom. So without further ado, I say we get straight into things. Is that okay? We want to start off by exploring the divisions or perhaps the differences between traditional media and social media. So, to set the scene, we know something like the Brexit Party was founded sometime the 20th of January 2019. But this same party, on the 23rd of May, we saw them beat some parties who have been around for over 100 years, right, in an election, which no one thought they could do well in when they first formed. Now their primary tool, and this was said by the leader himself, was social media. So social media initially, which was a tool that was scoffed at by people, it won't last, it's useless, they said, has been the primary tool that's allowed a party in no less than 6 months to actually win a major election. How has that happened, and what's the role now of traditional media? Who wants to start off?
I would challenge your analysis of what happened. Although the Brexit Party had a really amazing social media campaign, like I welled up at some of the videos that they made, and I'm like the Ramona in chief. Like like they had a really brilliant digital campaign. But the reason that they won an election is because they were founded by Nigel Farage, who gets a disproportionate amount of mainstream media attention. I think we have to remember that even though probably all of us are on Twitter, it's something like 7% of the people of voting age are actually on Twitter. And so all of the majority of the groundwork that was made for the Brexit Party specifically, in this case, was done because there was already a premise of a high-profile politician like Nigel Farage getting a load of attention on like the Today programme and on like media sports and all of those kind of things. That's not to say social media wasn't important, but I don't think it is what won the Brexit Party that election.
Grassroots, it's ground up, it's anyone can have a say. And so it takes the power away from the established media, who frankly are in the main, they're Remainers, and they don't much like Nigel Farage or anyone even to the further right. And so that's why, after Donald Trump used social media so effectively in 2016, shortly after that, Google, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all started to crack down on conservative-leaning social media. They shut down 30,000 Marine Le Pen Facebook pages in France. They shut down Jair Bolsonaro's WhatsApp groups in Brazil. So because traditional media is sympathetic to the parties of the establishment, the incumbents, social media is for the revolutionaries. So just like they did in Tahrir Square, Cairo, they shut down the social media. And in the UK, that means deplatforming Tommy Robinson. In the United States, that means shutting down conservatives. And because social media is the place for dissidents.
Got you. Now, let's go straight to the crowd now. Anyone in the crowd want to kind of give their thoughts up? Let's start with front here.
I have a really big issue with this idea that social media is for dissidents. I actually don't think that there is a huge amount of variation on social media. I think it's the ultimate place for echo chambers. I think we all listen to people that we like to listen to. I think why social media is so effective and what Brexit Party used it for is actually the fact that it allows us to then go offline. I think people can meet each other that they wouldn't be able to meet in real life, and then can meet offline and make change. And I think this is where it comes to your point. I don't think social media did win the Brexit Party, did help the Brexit Party win, but it helped them organise and facilitate them to win offline. And I think that's what we need to start seeing. Social media isn't a whole new place, it's a tool. And I think we need to start recognising it as that. It's like Google, it's like, we don't talk about Google winning an election. I think we need to start viewing social media as such.
I would also disagree with the idea that social media is distant for slightly different reasons. I think when you have boards that, for the most part, don't really do that much campaigning, but which can pull huge amounts of data about people and disseminate that however they want, as we saw with Facebook, it becomes just another form of the establishment, in which the power is taken from the people who produce these thoughts and produce this data, and it's instead sold on for profit for a third person, and I can't think of much else more establishment than that.
I'd like someone here to respond to that. Can you respond to anything someone said so far?
I can go. Yeah. I think that. Sorry. I think that what you said can be completely true, and with that opportunity and that arena for debate, there's a responsibility to use social media in a way that is gonna encourage that challenge, because it can massively, like you said, we follow who we like and we follow who we listen to, and I think it's up to our generation, like all users, but predominantly our generation, as we're the ones who are shaping this next generation of journalists, that we need to follow the people that we don't agree with, and we need to follow the people that totally offend us so much that we want to scream, and that's how you end up with it, using it in the best way, and using it as a really powerful tool to understand and better construct these arguments.
Yeah, so I think this whole topic of social media always raises the question, who has the responsibility? Do we all have the responsibility, or shall we point at someone who should have the main responsibility of checking the smaller barriers of responsibility? So, I would be really interested in what you think about that. Do you think that, for example, government should have responsibility of checking, those fishy people maybe on social media, or should there be a separate settlement checking it in any... or Facebook.
Before we move on to kind of regulation, because I think we're moving very fast here. I kind of want to slow down the pace a bit, because the discussion initially, if you remember, it's more about traditional media versus social media. So for instance, in 2007, the Brexit Party, then UKIP, was described by David Cameron as a party of fruitcakes and loonies. It was a fringe party that no one wanted to speak about. And for the most part, I think people would probably agree and say they probably didn't get that much media coverage. Now it's, mainstream media coverage, i.e. Major newspapers kind of saying this is good, this is great. Typically, they
UKIP was the biggest party after the European election before the last one. They were the biggest party that the UK sent to Europe.
The point I'm trying to make is, what we've now seen with a lot of these parties since 2007 is they've used social media to really organize themselves. So the point is really, is traditional media still fit for purpose? If people are finding ways to circumvent speaking to people, if Trump can just speak directly to the American people rather than going through news outlets, are things changing in a way that we quite frankly weren't ready for? I'd love to get Ezra to speak on it.
Sure, and I think that's...
It is, those traditional gatekeepers still exist, because as I said, we're all on Twitter, but most people aren't. Most people are not getting notifications at 4 in the morning when Trump tweets about, who's him or what, and how he's going to kick him out of the country and whatever. There is this idea that the social is kind of this place for dissonance, but it isn't going to hit our front doors unless the gatekeepers decide that it can, frankly.
That's a great point. Let's move to the crowd, because I have some people want to speak as well. So let's move here. Anyone else, if you just indicate, and then the gentleman at the back.
So I think the original question was supposed to be, is kind of traditional media more effective or less effective than social media, right? And I think from kind of what you guys have been saying is, I think we're thinking about it quite rightly in the wrong way. I look at social media as a different lens. The reason we get so shocked is because we live in a generation where we all have to be politically correct. So when we see social media, it's not unregulated, we just have the freedom to speak. and you can't actually see someone in person to have that kind of conflict of interest. And realistically, social media is different to each other user because we all follow different people. So depending on what kind of channel you are will depend on what you're influenced with. So when I look at social media, I think it's actually a great thing because a lot of the hidden voices that weren't presented in normal media, we still see. The Nigel Farage had been around for years, but having social media and allowing you to connect with so many people from around the world, and even nationally from around the UK, we've been able to see that difference in views. The traditional gatekeepers, we forget that they're also, in a similar way, like a Nigel Farage. Media is often the lens of who's behind the screen, right? So with all of these large gatekeepers like the BBC, CNN, all of these things, it's often what we see is what the person who's presenting this kind of media wants us to see, right? So the fact that you were all saying about it should kind of be like 3 identical kind of channels, that's because the people behind it want you to have those 3 identical channels. So having social media, I think, is a great thing because it allows us to cross-reference. For example, as a university student, you would never just use one source, right? So the fact that we have something like social media allows you to cross-reference, that you can kind of have what the people think and what the government thinks.
That's a great point. I want us to come back to that. I'm going to take those
sides. I think social media should not interfere with politics at all. I think it's one of the worst things that it does do, because when you regulate something, you no longer have, as you said, the bandwidth, the opinions, everything that you can and you are able to listen to, even if you don't want to hear it. And as you said, to your point, that people get offended by everything nowadays. Political correctness it's almost like it's the cancer of society now, where its feelings matter over facts, and facts don't care about your feelings more so than anything else. And as someone who's neither left nor right, but I've grown up in the millennial generation, what's frightening is, where do I go for a diversity of opinion nowadays if I have traditional media, I've got social media? That's why I have to look at so many different outlets, and what happens then is I get decision fatigue most of the time. I have to actually really, as you said, like university, you have to really research and decide where your viewpoint goes based on your facts. But we no longer really have that.
That's a great point.